My friend's sister claimed she was pregnant with my child, but refused to undergo a paternity test. Her parents insisted I take responsibility, yet I had no involvement with her, and she was demanding child support. This is precisely the sort of thing you hear happening to others, never imagining it could occur to you until it does. I was at a party chatting with some friends when, out of the blue, Jenny, my pal Matt's sister, someone with whom I'd exchanged merely a few words over the years, dropped a bombshell on me that I never saw coming. She was pregnant. Now, that wouldn't have been the end of the world, except she insisted it was my kid. Let me backtrack a bit here because believe me, this entire situation is as messed up as it sounds. Jenny and I were never close. Sure, I'd been to her house a few times because of Matt. We'd hung out in the same group at parties on a few occasions, but that was it. We never dated, never hooked up, nothing at all. So when she made this announcement, I felt as if the ground had vanished beneath me. I froze. I didn't even know what to utter. It felt as if everyone at the party fell silent simultaneously. I could sense the gazes upon me, and I just kept staring at her, thinking, you must be joking, right? But her expression indicated she wasn't. She was dead serious. I recall stammering, "What are you talking about?" Because seriously, how could this even be a possibility? I hadn't slept with her. We hadn't even flirted, for goodness sake. But she crossed her arms, glaring at me with this look of smug certainty. "It's yours, Liam. You know what happened," she said, her voice cold and steady, as if she'd rehearsed this in her mind a million times. Matt, who had been standing nearby, turned to me, his face as pale as a sheet. "Bro, what on earth is going on?" I had no clue. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to laugh, cry, or shout. At this point, I began to feel dizzy, as if I were in some bizarre dream. Jenny just remained standing there, looking at me with that strange confidence, as if I should simply accept it and deal with the fact that I was about to become a father. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said, attempting to remain calm, but my voice emerged sharper than I intended. Then Jenny's face contorted into this nasty smirk. "Don't you remember that night a few months ago? I know what happened, even if you want to pretend it didn't." I racked my brain attempting to figure out what she could possibly be referring to. Nothing. I mean, yeah, I've had a few wild nights, but not with her. I was certain of it. "I think you've got the wrong guy, Jenny. We've never—" I couldn't even complete the sentence, too confused to find the appropriate words, but she wouldn't budge. "I'm not taking a paternity test," she snapped as if she could read my thoughts. "You know what you did." Now that's when things truly began to spiral out of control. Refusing a paternity test, what was she concealing? I felt the tension rise around me as people whispered, likely wondering if I was just some scoundrel who got her pregnant and was attempting to weasel out of it. But that wasn't the case at all. It wasn't merely the pregnancy announcement that shocked me. It was the lie, the blatant lie that hit me like a freight train. Matt was still standing there, staring at me, his face filled with confusion and perhaps even a hint of anger. This was his sister, after all, and I could see him attempting to piece together what was transpiring. "Liam, seriously, man, what the hell?" he said. I shook my head. "Matt, I swear I have no idea what she's talking about." But Jenny persisted, turning the entire matter into some twisted soap opera. "You can deny it all you want, but you're going to have to assume responsibility." Now, I'm not the type to evade my responsibilities. If this were true, if there were even a chance it was true, I'd step up. But I knew deep down that this wasn't my child. Jenny was lying, and I couldn't fathom why. By this point, everyone at the party was staring at us, and I could sense their judgment in the air. I had to escape from there. I turned and walked out without uttering another word, my heart pounding, my mind racing. 1,000 miles an hour later that night, Matt called me. I didn't want to pick up, but I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. "Dude, you need to tell me what's going on," he said. He sounded exhausted, as if he were torn between believing his sister and trusting his friend.
I don't know, Matt.
"I don't know why she's saying this, but it's not true," I said, pacing around my apartment. There was a lengthy pause on the other end of the line, and then he sighed. "She says she won't take a paternity test. She said you're just going to have to believe her." My frustration boiled over. Why won't she take the test? If she's so certain, why wouldn't she want to prove it?
I don't know, man.
Matt muttered, sounding just as lost as I felt. "She's behaving strangely. She won't talk to me about it either." This entire thing was becoming more and more convoluted by the minute. What was her ultimate goal here? But the real kicker arrived the next day when Jenny's mom, Miss Harper, called me. That's when things transitioned from confusing to downright insane. "Liam, I know this is awkward, but I've heard everything, and I merely want to ensure this is handled appropriately," she said, her voice measured but tense. I attempted to remain composed. "Mrs. Harper, I didn't do anything. Jenny's lying. I don't know why, but this isn't my kid." There was a pause, and then she hit me with, "I don't care about the details. All I care about is that you sign this acknowledgement form so that we can sort this out quietly. No court battles. We can handle it privately." I nearly dropped the phone. She wanted me to sign what? An acknowledgement form without a paternity test. This was becoming increasingly insane by the minute. She was essentially asking me to admit to fathering a child I knew wasn't mine. "I'm not signing anything without proof," I said, my voice shaking with anger. Miss Harper's tone turned cold. "Jenny's been through enough. Don't make this more difficult than necessary." And just like that, I realized I was up against something far greater than just Jenny. Her entire family was backing this lie, and I was being set up, but for what?
Why?
What was the purpose of dragging me into this? I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. I felt as if I were being backed into a corner and had no idea how to extricate myself from it. Over the subsequent week, matters worsened. Words spread rapidly, and soon enough it seemed as if everyone in town was aware of Jenny's claim. Everywhere I went, people gave me that look, the one that said, "We know what you did." Friends who used to laugh and hang out with me began to distance themselves, unsure of what to believe. Matt scarcely spoke to me, and when he did, he seemed torn between defending his sister and believing me. It was incredibly awkward. He didn't outright accuse me, but I could sense the doubt in his voice. But here's where the plot thickened. One night, after I had spent hours agonizing over this, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I said, my voice tired and strained. There was a pause, then a woman's voice I didn't recognize came through the line. "Liam, this is Megan. I'm Jenny's cousin." I had never spoken to Megan before, but I'd seen her at a few family events. "Yeah, what's up?" She hesitated, and then, "I know what's going on, and I don't think you're the father." My stomach dropped.
What? How do you know that?
She sighed. Look, I can't provide you with all the details, but I know Jenny's been hiding something. You need to speak to her ex-boyfriend, Connor. Connor. I hadn't even known Jenny had an ex-boyfriend. This was getting weirder and weirder by the second. Megan continued. I don't know if it's his kid or not, but something isn't right. I thought you should know. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Have you ever had one of those moments where you think things couldn't possibly deteriorate further, and then the universe laughs in your face and proves you wrong? That's precisely what occurred when I decided to inform my parents about Jenny's accusation. Now, my parents, Barbara and George, are as traditional as they come. They believe in doing things the correct way, which to them means no messing around before marriage, no scandal, no nothing that could bring disgrace to the family. Growing up, they drilled that into my head. My dad would always say we're Harpers. We have a reputation to uphold, and God forbid I ever did anything to tarnish that. So when I decided I had to tell them about Jenny's bombshell, I knew I was walking into a disaster. But what alternative did I have? Word was spreading rapidly around town, and it was only a matter of time before they heard it from someone else. Better they hear it from me, right?
Wrong.
I drove over to their house on a Sunday afternoon, my stomach twisted in knots. I felt as if I were heading to my own execution. When I entered, they were sitting in the living room, my mom knitting as she always did, and my dad reading the newspaper. It was such a normal scene, and for a moment I wished I could simply walk out and forget the entire thing. Liam, honey, what are you doing here? You don't typically visit on Sundays, my mom said, her face lighting up when she saw me. I sat down on the couch, my heart pounding.
I need to talk to you guys about something.
My dad lowered the paper, giving me that stern look he always did when he knew something serious was approaching. What's going on? I took a deep breath. There's a rumor circulating about Jenny Harper. My mom's face immediately darkened at the mention of the Harpers. That girl, what about her? I swallowed hard. She's claiming she's pregnant and that I'm the father. For a moment, the room was deathly silent. My mom's knitting needles clattered to the floor, and my dad's face turned a shade of red I'd never witnessed before. Then all hell broke loose.
What?
My dad roared, standing up so rapidly his chair nearly toppled over. You got that girl pregnant? I didn't, I protested, but it was futile. He wasn't listening. Dad, I swear it's not true. I never slept with her. She's lying, but he wasn't receptive. He stormed across the room, his fists clenched, his face livid. I can't believe this. Do you know what this will do to our family? Do you know the shame you've brought upon us? My mom, who is typically the calm one, was crying at this point.
How could you?
Liam, we raised you better than this. We told you to be responsible. I didn't do anything, I shouted, but it felt as if I were speaking to a brick wall. They had already made up their minds. My dad jabbed a finger in my face. You're going to assume responsibility for this, whether you like it or not. I don't care if she's lying or not. You're going to be a man and step up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
What?
You want me to assume responsibility for something I didn't do? He glared at me, his voice low and menacing. You're not going to embarrass this family. You'll do whatever it takes to rectify this. Rectify what? I shot back, my voice rising. There's nothing to rectify because it's not my kid, but it made no difference. My dad had already determined that I was guilty, and then my mom dropped the real bombshell. If you don't assume responsibility for this, Liam, we're going to have to sever ties with you, she said, her voice trembling. I froze.
What?
My dad nodded. You heard her. We can't have this kind of scandal in the family. If you refuse to handle this appropriately, you're no longer our son. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents were threatening to disown me over a lie. I stood there feeling as if the ground had just been ripped out from beneath me. You're really going to disown me over this? Over something I didn't even do? My mom wiped her eyes. We don't have a choice, Liam. You've placed us in an impossible position. I was speechless. This was insane. How could they turn on me like this? I attempted one final time to get them to understand. Mom, Dad, please, I didn't do this. She won't even undergo a paternity test. Doesn't that indicate something? But my dad just shook his head. Enough. You'll assume responsibility, or you're out of this family. It's your choice. I left their house that day feeling completely shattered. My own parents had turned against me all because of a lie. I didn't know what to do. How was I supposed to combat this when even my own family didn't believe me? Over the next few days, matters just continued to worsen. My parents called me every day, demanding I meet with Jenny's family to resolve matters. They kept insisting that I needed to do the right thing and own up to my mistake. I attempted to explain to them repeatedly that I hadn't made any mistake, but it was like talking to a wall. Then, out of the blue, my dad showed up at my apartment. He didn't even knock, just barged right in. I was sitting on the couch attempting to figure out what the hell I was going to do when he stormed in, looking more furious than ever. You're going to meet with Jenny's family tonight, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. I'm not, I replied, attempting to remain composed. I'm not meeting with them because this isn't my problem. You're going to meet with them, he repeated, stepping closer to me, and you're going to sort this out. I stood up, my frustration boiling over.
Dad, why won't you believe me?
I didn't do this. He glared at me, his face inches from mine. Because this isn't just about you, Liam. This is about our family, and I won't allow you to drag us through the mud. I couldn't believe it. So you're willing to ruin my life over a lie? He didn't say anything. He just stood there staring me down as if I were some kind of criminal. Finally, he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. That night I received a call from Jenny's mom, Miss Harper, again. She wanted me to come over and meet with them to discuss the future. The future? What future? I wasn't the father of this baby, and I sure as hell wasn't going to pretend I was, but I knew I couldn't avoid this forever. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet with them. When I arrived at their house, the tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Jenny's parents were sitting on the couch, looking serious, and Jenny herself was standing by the window, avoiding eye contact with me. Matt was there too, sitting silently, his face tense. Thank you for coming, Liam, Mrs. Harper said, her voice tight. I nodded, not really sure what to say. I wanted to scream at them, to demand why they were subjecting me to this nightmare, but I knew that wouldn't be helpful. We've all discussed, Mr. Harper said, his voice calm but firm, and we believe the best course of action for everyone involved is for you to sign this acknowledgement form. There it was again, that damn form. I clenched my fists, attempting to remain calm. I'm not signing anything until we conduct a paternity test. Jenny turned around then, her face hard. I'm not undergoing a test. I told you that.
Why not?
I demanded, my frustration boiling over. If you're so certain it's my kid, why wouldn't you want to prove it? Her face twisted in anger. I don't need to prove anything to you. The entire room fell silent. I could feel the tension escalating. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. This was a full-blown trap, and they were all in on it. We can't force her to undergo a test, Miss Harper said, her voice calm, but we can proceed without it. If you sign the form, we'll all agree to handle this quietly. No court, no public scandal. It's the best way to safeguard everyone's reputation. I stared at her, my blood boiling. You want me to sign a form stating I'm the father of a child that isn't mine? Are you out of your mind? Miss Harper's face hardened. If you don't sign, we'll take this to court, and believe me, Liam, this won't end well for you. That was the final straw. I stood up, my heart racing.
Take it to court then.
I'm not signing anything without a test. The room fell deathly silent. I could feel their eyes on me, filled with judgment and anger, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to allow them to ruin my life over a lie. As I walked out, I heard Jenny's voice behind me. You'll regret this, Liam, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, determined to fight this no matter what it entailed. A few days later, my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but when I saw it was from Megan, Jenny's cousin, who had hinted that something was amiss before, I picked up. Liam, you need to come over now, she said, her voice urgent. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. Megan had been the sole person to suggest that something wasn't right, and I needed all the assistance I could obtain. When I arrived at her place, she ushered me inside rapidly. I have something to show you, she said, her voice low. She led me to her living room and pulled out her phone. I didn't want to say anything before because I wasn't certain, but now, well, you need to see this. I believed the nightmare had ultimately concluded when the paternity test results emerged, indisputably demonstrating that I wasn't the father of Jenny's baby. For a fleeting moment, I experienced a wave of relief. I thought, at last, I could reclaim my life. I assumed people would perceive the truth, and that this entire chaotic mess would finally be behind me. However, I was mistaken. Jenny wasn't finished with me yet. The test results were out, and naturally, they affirmed what I had been insisting all along. I wasn't the father. The relief I felt was ephemeral because almost immediately after the results became official, Jenny chose to reverse the situation. Instead of admitting her lie and moving on, allowing me to clear my name, she embarked on a full-scale defamation campaign. She informed everyone that I had fabricated the test results. Yes, you heard that correctly. In some insane twist of events, Jenny began spreading rumors that I had somehow manipulated the paternity test. I have no idea how she even conceived such an idea, but in the realm of gossip and rumors, facts hold no significance. People are more concerned with drama and a captivating story. Suddenly, I wasn't merely the guy who had been wrongly accused of fathering a child I never had. I became the villain who was attempting to evade responsibility by cheating the system. The rumors spread like wildfire. Everywhere I went, it felt as if people were whispering about me behind my back, casting those judgmental sideways glances. Even individuals who had known me for years started behaving differently. They refrained from saying anything to my face, of course. No one ever does. But I could sense it. I could feel their doubt and mistrust. It was as if no matter what I did, no matter how much evidence I presented, people simply preferred to believe the worst of me. At work, things became awkward. My colleagues, who used to joke around with me and socialize after hours, suddenly grew distant. I caught them exchanging peculiar looks whenever I entered the break room. My boss, Mr. Fletcher, even pulled me aside one day and inquired if everything was okay. Not because he was concerned about me, but because he was worried about the company's image. The conversation unfolded something like this. Liam, I've heard some, Mr. Fletcher said, looking uncomfortable as he shifted in his chair. Things, I asked, even though I knew precisely what he was referring to. About that situation with Jenny Harper. I just want to ensure that this won't impact your work or our reputation here at the firm. I wanted to shout, Mr. Fletcher. The paternity test came back. I'm not the father. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Yes, yes, I've heard that. But there are also rumors that you might have tampered with the results. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my boss, a man for whom I had worked for years, who knew my character, and yet he was buying into Jenny's lies. I didn't tamper with anything, I said through gritted teeth, attempting to maintain my composure. The test was conducted at an official lab. It's legitimate. He raised his hands in a placating gesture. I'm not accusing you of anything, Liam. I'm merely stating that we need to be cautious about how this appears, how people talk. Yeah, I'm all too familiar with how people talk. The most detrimental aspect was not just at work. My social life crumbled. Friends who had known me for years, individuals I believed I could trust, began to distance themselves. I stopped receiving invitations to parties and texts to hang out. It was as if I had been blacklisted, not for something I had done, but for something someone else had fabricated. And the more I endeavored to defend myself, the more it seemed as if people thought I was concealing something. The rumors worsened. Jenny began telling people that I had pressured her for months to refrain from taking the paternity test because I was aware of the truth all along. She distorted everything, presenting herself as the victim in this entire chaos and me as the villain. According to her, I had callously abandoned her and the baby, and now I was exploiting my influence to clear my name. Influence? I'm just an ordinary guy. What influence did she think I possessed? Every time I attempted to fight back, it only added fuel to the fire. People would say, if you're innocent, why are you so defensive? Or if you have nothing to hide, why not just let it go? But how do you let go of a lie that's demolishing your entire life? I felt like I was losing my sanity, but the ultimate straw was with my parents. Even after the legal confirmation that I wasn't the father, even after the court cleared my name, my parents didn't promptly apologize. In fact, it took them several days. Days during which they remained silent, as if they weren't certain whether to believe the test results or Jenny's lies. The pain was beyond description. They were supposed to be my family. They were supposed to support me, and yet when I needed them the most, they doubted me. Finally, one evening, my mom called me. I recall sitting in my apartment, staring at the phone as it rang, contemplating whether I even desired to answer it. But I did. Liam, her voice was soft and hesitant, as if she wasn't sure if she had the right to be speaking to me. What is it, Mom? I asked, my tone flat. I wasn't in the mood for a heartfelt conversation. There was a pause, and then she said, "We owe you an apology." I almost laughed. Now, they wanted to apologize after everything that had transpired. After they had turned their backs on me. After they had threatened to disown me. It was far too little, far too late. "I'm sorry we didn't believe you," she continued, her voice shaky. "Your father and I, we were just so concerned about the family's reputation. We thought, we were doing the right thing." The right thing? They believed throwing me under the bus was the right thing. I took a deep breath, attempting to remain calm. "Mom, you didn't believe me. You chose Jenny's lies over your own son. Do you have any idea how that feels?" "I know," she whispered. "And we're so, so sorry." Then came the real shocker. "We want to assist you. We know this has been difficult, and we've set aside some money for you to help you get back on your feet."
Money?
They believed money could rectify this. I clenched the phone, my frustration escalating. "You think throwing money at me is going to compensate for what you did?" "It's not about that," she said quickly. "We just want to make things right." But they couldn't make things right. The damage had been done. I had spent months being maligned, ostracized by friends, doubted by my own parents, all because of a lie. And now when the truth was revealed, when they finally realized I had been telling the truth all along, they thought a check could fix it. "I don't want your money," I said, my voice low. "Liam, please, I don't want anything from you." I interrupted, my voice shaking with anger. "You didn't believe me when I needed you the most. You turned on me, and now you think an apology and some money are going to make everything better?" "I'm done, Mom. I'm done with all of it." There was silence on the other end of the line, and then softly she said, "Liam, please don't say that. We love you." I closed my eyes, the words stinging more than I anticipated. "If you loved me, you would have believed me."
Goodbye, Mom.
I hung up before she could say anything else, and just like that, I felt the final bond between me and my parents snapped. I was done. Done with their lies. Done with their betrayal. Done with their obsession with reputation over family. Parting ways with my family wasn't effortless. Despite the hurt they had caused me, the sense of betrayal I felt, they were still my parents. But I couldn't remain connected to individuals who had so readily believed the worst of me. I couldn't feign that everything was okay when they had abandoned me at my lowest point. The following few weeks were arduous. The rumors persisted, and Jenny was still spreading her tales. But at least I had the legal proof on my side. That was something, right? I kept telling myself that the truth would eventually surface, that people would see through her lies. But in a small town, once a rumor starts, it's like a stain that can't be washed away. People are more interested in the scandal than the facts. And no matter how frequently I attempted to explain, it felt as if no one truly wanted to listen. I distanced myself from everyone. I ceased going out, stopped attempting to defend myself, stopped trying to repair the damage Jenny had inflicted. I needed a break. I needed to figure out who I was without all this drama looming over me. So I decided to take some time off work and stay with my cousin Sarah in another town for a while. She had always been a neutral party in all of this. Someone who listened to me without judgment. Someone who hadn't believed the lies. When I informed her that I needed a place to stay for a bit, she didn't hesitate. "Of course, Liam. Stay as long as you need." It felt like the first genuine support I'd received in months. Being away from my hometown was precisely what I needed. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe. There were no whispers, no judgmental looks, no awkward conversations. It was just me and Sarah hanging out like old times, discussing everything except the chaos I had left behind. One night, we were sitting on her porch, watching the sunset when she turned to me and said, "You know, you don't have to return if you don't wish to." I hadn't truly contemplated it before. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I mean, perhaps it's time to start anew, find a new place, get away from all the drama. You don't know anyone back there. Not your parents, not your friends, not Jenny. You could begin afresh." The idea of leaving everything behind, of starting anew, was enticing. I had spent so much time attempting to defend myself, attempting to clear my name that I hadn't considered simply walking away from it all. "Maybe," I said, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in months. "Maybe it was time to let go, to stop fighting and start living my life anew on my own terms." As the days passed, I began to seriously consider what Sarah had said. I realized that I had been clinging to the notion that I needed to rectify things with my parents, with my reputation, with everything. But the truth was, some matters couldn't be fixed. And that was acceptable. Jenny had attempted to ruin my life, and in certain ways, she had succeeded. But I wasn't going to allow her to have the final say. I wasn't going to let my parents' betrayal define me. It was time to move on. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control of my life again. And that was sufficient. I wish I could say walking away from my parents marked the end of the story. But life has a peculiar way of dragging you back into the chaos, even when you're striving your utmost to leave it behind. For a period, things were peaceful. I was residing with my cousin Sarah, gradually reconstructing my life away from the drama Jenny had created and the suffocating hold of my parents. I thought that was it, that I could finally move forward, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The first indication of trouble emerged approximately 2 months after I had moved away. I was starting to feel like myself again. My mind was clearer, and I had even initiated the search for work in Sarah's town. I wasn't certain if I was going to stay for the long term, but having options was pleasant. Then one morning, I received a message from an old friend back home. It was strange because I hadn't conversed with him in months, not since everything transpired with Jenny and the paternity test. I hadn't reached out to many people after severing ties with my parents. It was simply more convenient that way. His message was brief and, truthfully, it caught me off guard. "Hey man, your parents have been inquiring about you. They wanted me to get in touch. Said it was important." I stared at the message for a while, unsure of how to respond. My parents? Really? After everything that had occurred, I had made it explicit that I didn't desire any contact with them. But apparently, they hadn't received the message. I deliberated whether or not to reply, but ultimately decided to disregard it. If they wanted to reach out, they could do it themselves. But that was merely the beginning. Over the subsequent few weeks, I began receiving messages from all sorts of people. Friends, old colleagues, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. They all had the same message. "Your parents are attempting to get in touch with you. They say they merely wish to talk." At first, I brushed it aside. But as the messages continued to arrive, it started to feel as if they were closing in on me. It wasn't just a few individuals. It was everyone. I'd wake up to texts, missed calls, even emails from people stating that my parents had requested them to contact me. One day, I received a call from my old boss, Mr. Fletcher, the same individual who had given me a hard time regarding the rumors when Jenny was spreading lies about me. I hadn't anticipated hearing from him at all, so I was taken aback when his name appeared on my phone. "Liam, it's good to hear from you," he said, his voice overly formal. "Yeah, what's up?" I asked, not truly certain where this was headed. "Well," he began, and I could tell he was attempting to select his words carefully. "Your parents contacted me. They said they've been attempting to reach you, and they're worried. They asked if I could convey a message." My blood boiled. My parents had called my boss. This was becoming absurd. "They're worried," I said, my voice thick with sarcasm. "Well, they shouldn't be. I'm fine, and I don't appreciate them involving you in this." Mr. Fletcher cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "I understand, Liam. They seemed quite concerned." "They've got nothing to be concerned about," I said, attempting to control my anger. "I don't want them contacting me. I've made that clear." There was a pause, and then Mr. Fletcher added, "I'll inform them, but perhaps you should speak with them. They're your family after all." I hung up after that, not bothering to explain any further. Family or not, I wasn't returning. They had crossed the line. And now they were crossing even more by involving my old boss and friends in their attempts to reach me. It didn't cease there. Over the next few weeks, matters escalated. My parents didn't merely limit their interference to friends and colleagues. They began reaching out to my new acquaintances in Sarah's town. Individuals I had scarcely known for a few months were suddenly asking me why my parents were so desperate to speak with me. My parents had apparently gone so far as to hire a private investigator to track me down. And now even casual acquaintances were embroiled in this mess. One day when I was at the grocery store, I received a call from Sarah. Her voice was tense. "Liam, I just received a call from someone. They claimed they were working with your parents and wanted to know if I could assist them in reconnecting with you." I could feel my heart pounding. They had gone too far.
What?
"They called you." "Yeah," she said, sounding equally annoyed and concerned. "They were attempting to sound polite and worried about you, but it was creepy. I informed them not to call me again. That's it. I'm not going to deal with this anymore." They had crossed every imaginable boundary, and I was done playing along.
Now.
I called a lawyer the very next day. The legal process wasn't straightforward, but it was necessary. My lawyer, a no-nonsense individual named Christine, listened to my story with a grave expression on her face. She had dealt with challenging family situations before, but even she seemed astounded by how far my parents had gone. "You have every right to cut off contact," she said firmly. After I concluded explaining everything, "This kind of harassment cannot continue. We'll file a court order to ensure they cease." I felt a strange mixture of relief and frustration. I didn't desire for it to come to this. I never envisioned having to take legal action against my own parents, but they had pushed me to the brink. I couldn't live like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who they would contact next. Christine worked expeditiously, and within a few weeks, I had a court order in place that legally prohibited my parents from contacting me directly or through third parties. If they attempted to reach out to me again, they would be violating the order, and I could take further legal action. For a while, it was effective. The flood of messages and calls ceased. I could breathe once more. But of course, my parents weren't finished yet. They had one more trick up their sleeve. Not long after the court order was finalized, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm, not mine. I opened it, my hands shaking, and my stomach dropped when I saw its contents. My parents were suing me for unspecified damages. I couldn't believe it. After everything they had done, after the lies, the manipulation, and the harassment, now they were attempting to claim that I had caused them emotional harm. The sheer absurdity of it made me want to scream. They were truly attempting to reverse the narrative, trying to portray themselves as the victims in this entire debacle. I called Christine immediately, and she was just as outraged as I was. "This is ridiculous," she said. "They have no basis for this. They're merely attempting to bully you into submission." I knew she was correct, but that didn't make it any easier. The thought of going to court again, of facing my parents, and engaging in another legal battle was exhausting. But I had no choice. I wasn't going to permit them to get away with this. The court case dragged on for months. My parents' lawyers argued that I had caused them emotional distress by cutting off contact, that my refusal to reconcile had tarnished their reputation within the community. They depicted me as the ungrateful, rebellious son.